Greetings. Welcome to today's program. Happy Monday to all of you. Welcome to our annual Superhero T-shirt week, which is just an excuse for me to wear superhero T-shirts. I am Steve Deace. He is Todd Erzin. See, if I make it a thing and I brand it, it's a thing, right?
Okay.
Aaron McIntyre's over there as well. Aaron, how are you?
Good, after I saw Todd's reaction to your introduction of Superhero T-shirt week.
I know this is your favorite week of the year. Only equaled in enthusiasm by Sports Jersey Week. I know that's your other favorite week. You guys look forward to that.
Well, this is, it's Captain America T-shirt. I think that's standard issue American Dude. I have one. I have one that's so old. My girls got it for me like back in the day. It's like not wearable like here because it's like holes and falling apart. So like Captain America, I can do this all day. That's a T-shirt. So, but to have, I don't like you do. So we're doing this all week. How many are in the arsenal? How many can you select from?
Oh, I could select from at least a dozen.
Yeah, there you go. I do not have a dozen.
Yeah. All right. So, folks, in the last week, we're going to have an Ask Me Anything next hour. I can't even imagine what questions are in there right now.
I can't because I've seen them.
I cannot even imagine. We're so backlogged with guest requests that Todd was pushing yesterday to book some guests in the second hour today just so they'd stop bugging him, pretty much, right?
More or less.
Yeah, but I'm like, no, we have to do an Ask Me Anything. I can't even imagine what questions are sitting in there right now. So we are going to do an Ask Me Anything from our fans over at Facebook. That's coming up next hour. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk to Jeff Myers from Summit Ministries. He is concerned about future relations between Christians and Israel moving forward. So we're going to get into that at the bottom of the hour. But in the last week or so, just about 8-9 days, we saw one major party's presidential candidate left out in an open field with a clear line of sight shooter to be assassinated. And this is after he faced a 2-year coup when he was in office called Russian collusion. That never was true. In the span of 1 week, we saw that, and then we saw the current president who came to power because of those forces, then succumb to a coup against him from those exact same forces as the other party's nominee.
Correct.
If you are not yet awake to where we are on the map, to the signs of the times, I don't know. I don't know what'll do it at this point. I don't. And that's why you want to get a hold of our friends over at My Patriot Supply, because, man, we're out of Rubicons to cross. I don't know how many more times we can say, that could never happen here. And it does shortly thereafter. Make sure you've got the 3-month emergency food kit from the most trusted name in, well, they call it survival. I'd call it just in case. Okay. Over 2,000 calories a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, even drinks and snacks. Well over a dozen different possibilities to mix and match as well. Save $200 and get free shipping. This stuff stays good for a quarter century. It comes in heavy duty packaging. Gives you the peace of mind that you are looking for as you are watching some of the craziest days in American history and in human history are taking place right now. So, preparewithdace.com is where you want to go just to check that box to make sure. Preparewithdace.com. We've got crumbling infrastructure. The state of Texas, man, has been completely undone by 2 different, electrical outings or outages because of major storms. One in the winter, one in the hurricane just about a week or so ago. Even here in Iowa, up in northwest Iowa, levee breaks, something that's like never happened before, floods the entire area for a week and a half. Just be ready. Preparewithdace.com. And now get yourself ready for Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by this.
My fellow Americans, I want to take a moment to address some of the hateful shit you've been talking about me. Many of you have said I am suffering from brain worms, or that I have applesauce for brains. Well, I won't mince words, so here it is. You. You're all a bunch of f***s. End of quote. Repeat the line. So enjoy President Cackles or President Booty Juice. I really don't give 2 f***s anymore. Biden out.
Although it's been nearly 24 hours and we have zero photographical evidence, Joe Biden understands or has willingly withdrawn from his re-election bid. As of right now, he will not be the Democratic nominee for president. Posting a letter on social media and basically nothing else, Biden says he's dropping his re-election bid for the good of his party and the country. Biden is reportedly endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris. Some within the Democrat Party are pushing for an open convention next month, and various outlets are reporting there's pressure on outgoing West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin to re-register as a Democrat from Independent and challenge Kamala at the convention. CNN reports a short list for vice president for Kamala is Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, or Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. House Speaker Mike Johnson is now the highest-profile Republican to contend that if Joe Biden is unfit to run for re-election, he's unfit to be president. For the first time since 1976, there will not be a Bush, Clinton, or Biden on either party's ticket. That's nearly 50 years ago. Donald Trump is now the oldest major party presidential candidate to accept his party's nomination, so get ready for a bunch of gaslighting where that's concerned. Also, get ready for a lot more of this.
My fellow Americans, words have many meanings, and sometimes instead of conveying our meaning, they can suggest other meanings.
When we talk about the children of the community, they are children of the community.
Well, we are the United States of America because we are united. And we are states.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time.
Whatever we have in store cannot be known. The past was once the future. The future is, I should say, unknown.
We got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously.
Obesity is a serious disease, and it needs to be taken seriously.
You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
I hope that clarifies the issue, and this can be the last word on those words.
Certain issues are just settled.
Clearly we're not.
No, that's right. And that's why I do believe that we are living, sadly, in real unsettled time.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. If you are tired of giving money to corporations who are totally fine with endless wars, stalling economies, apparently never-ending inflation ascensions, the relentless assault on our values, then you want to make the switch today as much as you can to a company like Patriot Mobile. There are not Patriot Mobile-style companies, unfortunately, in every necessary endeavor in our culture these days, but one thankfully does exist in a business all of us pretty much need nowadays, and that's our mobile phones. Make the switch today. They have an outstanding customer service team based right here in the U.S. That means you can understand them. All right, they have a great product, great coverage. They'll give you access to all the major networks. You can switch at any time for free, and they'll customize your plan for you and your family. That means you can keep your phone upgraded. You can keep your number, switch your number, whatever you would like to do. They'll make it happen for you at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Make the switch today, patriotmobile.com/Steve, and use the offer code Steve to get a free month of service today with the offer code Steve. A free month of service today with the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Okay. I want to make sure that we do this a different way today. Because for the last several weeks, I have been repeating a mantra. They are not like us. You cannot analyze them the way you would us. They are way more ruthless, way more persistent, and want to win way more than we do. Now, a quick caveat on that. They're always going to want to win more than we do, because the we I'm talking to are people that understand this world is not our ultimate home. So they're always going to care about this mortal coil to some degree more than we will. They will always be willing to go to depths and lengths to secure it, that we just think in the end that buy price isn't worth it to us, right? That's inevitable, okay? The problem is the way more. Okay, they're always going to be way more ruthless. They have an ethical code that we don't. They don't really believe in a higher power other than climbing higher through the levers of power. So they have an accountability mechanism or they don't have an accountability mechanism that we have. So they're always going to be they're always going to be more ruthless. The problem is they're way more. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Like the problem is not where they are, it's where we are. We're too soft. And we're not discerning enough. For most of us, that's not our fault. Unfortunately, we've lived in an era where the church has gone out of its way. Corporately, there's always a remnant, but corporately has gone out of its way to make us as soft and jiggle-bellied as any generation of Americans have ever been. So we're out of shape for this fight, okay? We need like a Rocky montage right now, right? Christians were like Rocky at the beginning of Rocky 3, and the spirit of the age is Clubber Lang. Okay? The spirit of the age, man, is doing chin-ups off a pipe in the basement. It's got the eye of the tiger. Okay? It's outworking us. We're living off the exhaust of past generations, kind of working out, doing photo ops. We want talking points. We're grifting. We want ads. We want an audience. We want to be an influencer. You see what I'm saying? Okay? Then we get into the ring. What happens? We just get smoked. Got to go back to the street. Got to go back to where it started. Got to get that eye of the tiger back. So for negative world, and the biblical worldview is our show's prime directive in all ways. Now, in different eras, that may evolve in terms of what the primary mission within that ethic is, correct? Mm-hmm. In this era, until further notice, the prime directive of a biblical worldview on this show will be to help believers get back the eye of the tiger. Amen?
Amen.
To be ready and prepared for what is here and even worse, what is coming, because many of our churches are not doing that. Even me, I'm putting myself in here. I mean, I executive produced a movie that damn near killed me twice about a demonic takeover of America. And even I kind of still didn't fully get and grasp what was going on here until I saw them 9 days ago try to assassinate Trump in an open field, and I thought, holy crap. I mean, I've got issues with that guy I probably will never fully reconcile with. I've got issues with his movement I probably will never fully reconcile with. But I know this. He's taking bullets that our pastors are supposed to be taking. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So this isn't really about what I think of Donald Trump. It's about what the enemy does and what they see him as. And what they see is that him and the people he leads are the only thing standing between them and complete hegemony over Western civilization. It should be they see the church as that, correct?
Oh, yes.
But they don't, do they?
They do not.
And so therefore, since that's where the battle is, guess where we need to go? Where the battle is at. And that's where we are now. We're there now. So even somebody who has written books and produced movies about all of this still needed oh crap, I missed it. This is what's actually happening. So we all need to wake up. All of us do. So the prime directive of this show, which is the biblical worldview element, is going to be, and we had no idea when we started doing the book of Romans, man, that was providential too. We had no idea we were going to end up here, because if there's any book in the entire New Testament who essentially could be subheaded "Man Up," it is this one. Fair? It's why a lot of your soft, jiggle-bellied churches won't preach it nowadays. Romans doesn't leave you a way out. Only shows you the path through. And that is going to lead to confrontation regardless. So we want to help. This show we want to be, this is what I want you guys to hold me accountable to for the time being. Okay, until the signs of the times indicate that the mission objective needs to change, okay? But for the time being, and that could be a week, it could be 6 months, it could be 5 years, I don't know. For the time being, the mission of this show, when it pertains to its prime directive, which is the advancement of a biblical worldview, is to help the church recover its eye of the tiger, okay? We are the Rocky training montage is what we are. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's what we are. That's what we are striving to be. So, and we ask all of you, hold us accountable to that. That's part of an apostolic calling, by the way. Apostles in the first century prepared their people for negative world, for these kinds of confrontations. That's what almost all of Romans is. So we need to strive. You know, we've talked a lot about giving each other maximum grace in negative world, and we need to also be persistent in pushing one another to wake up to the fullness of what is occurring here. Because when you have this level of chaotic activity in a span of a week in a country of this magnitude, Those aren't random occurrences. We are not living in a time where we're voting in elections for the soul of America. It's the opposite. There's a spiritual battle that has long been waging here, and it's now spilling over into what we're seeing politically in America. It's the opposite. So with that end, I want to go back. I want to go back to something, and, you know, I've taken a lot of heat, deservedly so, for believing there was going to be a red wedding November of 22. And I don't know that anybody's mocked me more than myself, okay? But I do learn my lessons, give me credit for that. And I have completely recalibrated the way I analyze this process since that election. We don't pour over polls and data points and anecdotes to the point we got a poll jar sitting here to find ourselves in-house if the dog returns to its own vomit, right? Since then, I've actually had a pretty decent track record. I told you they would stop at nothing to convict Trump of felonies and put him in prison. That's still not over, by the way. There is still a sentencing to come in Minnesota or in September in Manhattan. And if you're like, well, they won't do it now, I don't know. They just let him wide open. I mean, would we find out over the weekend? The Washington Post, of all people, reporting they did deny Trump further Secret Service detail. That's not a right-wing conspiracy now. Okay. The dude was flying drones. What's next? I mean, we're one news cycle away from the dude had a prop plane flying over the overhead say, I finna kill Trump in 5. Stat. I mean, what's next? Dude showed up in a t-shirt. Trump will be dead soon. Take cover. I mean, what's next? No, do not. I mean, don't take anything off the table. Nothing. Because they are not like us. You cannot analyze them the way you would us. They're way more ruthless, persistent, and want to win way more. They should always want those things more than us. But they can't want them way more than us. Then the salt has lost its savor, and we're of no use to anybody in a fight against evil. Good luck, by the way, spreading the message of a church who has no answer to the evils of the world and frankly doesn't seem interested in them. People, that's just a charity social club, and there's a million of those these days, yes. Right? Yeah, and that's where we are. So with that said, you have to analyze them backwards. They are the upside down. Demonic constructs are always inversions of the kingdom. Always. They're bizarro world inversions of the kingdom. For example, we have the cross. The demonic variation is the upside down cross. For example, we have the Father, Son, Holy Spirit pointing up. They turn that triangle upside down. The beast, the false prophet, and the Antichrist. They are the upside down. It's the inversion. So, because we do have ethics, because we do have standards, we tend to begin from, okay, what do the current ethics and standards permit me to do? And then I will act accordingly. Okay? No. Do not analyze them. Don't send me any email. Say they have to get on the Ohio. No, they don't. No, they don't. Dude, the President of the United States hasn't been seen in public since Wednesday. Kamala Harris has spoken before the president has. 72 hours ago, they were attempting to push back the convention and then delay the roll call vote when Biden still wouldn't go. Don't listen to people who tell you stuff like that. Don't even look any of that stuff up. Don't look up delegate rules. None of that matters. None of it does. What these people do is exactly what they want, and then they dare us to find a Supreme Court or somebody somewhere to tell them they can't. And that's their only standard if someone says you can't. Because we're not a nation of laws, and we never have been. We're a nation of political will, and we always will be. And they are will to power all the way, which is why I thought Joe was gone. Despite friends of mine, people I respect, well, there's no mechanism. They are the mechanism. They are a law unto themselves. They necromanced Joe 72 hours before Super Tuesday 5 years ago or 4 years ago. You saw them just lay him to rest here in the last 72 hours here. Okay? And the they I'm talking about is the spirit of the age. You're not dealing with Democrats. They're the front. You're dealing with the demonic. So think like that. The Democratic Party is a demonic construct. So then we're going to analyze what's going to happen next back to front. If we were analyzing us, we would analyze it front to back. We'd look at polls. We'd look at trends. We'd look at, who's effective and who's not. Nope. And then determine what the results will be from those things, right? When we analyze them, you start with the results and then you work backwards from there. So here is the end game result of all of this. They are not doing all of this to go into Labor Day weekend and the official start of the general election campaign with poopy polling. Not going to happen. Not happening. Nope. So it looks like it's Kamala Harris right now. It may end up being her. It may well. But it is absolutely just as likely that they are closing ranks behind her right now, because it will be her, as it is that they won't. And it won't. Well, Steve, what does that mean? What it means is, right now, they can't just step over Kamala Harris. They've got racial idolatry issues. So right now, she is being given an all clear. She's getting a tryout, basically. And she's got until August 18th, the night before the Democratic convention, she's got until August 18th to show she can carry this torch. And if she doesn't, she'll be even easier to get rid of than Joe Biden was. But they have to give her a tryout because they're divided within their own racial idolatry base, so they're going to. And then if they get to August 18th and there's still national polls showing her down by 5 or 6 points, see, they need this to be close enough so that there is a credible narrative to fortify the election here in a few months. Well, we had the first black woman candidate. We had this amazing outpouring of votes from all these inner cities, screaming in the year 2024, we shall overcome, like it's 1824. And she was able to make up a couple of points on the ground in Philadelphia and in Phoenix and in Detroit. See where I'm going here? And in Milwaukee. That they don't have that narrative right now. They need to create it. If it looks like she can create it by August 18th, she'll be the nominee. And they'll give her a candidate as a running mate that will either win her. Look at the ones that Aaron mentioned. They all fit the profile I'm about to describe. Win her a electoral state. Mark Kelly would win her Arizona, for example. Josh Shapiro would win her Pennsylvania, for example. Roy Cooper would win her North Carolina, for example. Or you put Andy Beshear in there, and he's basically your. We talked last year that if Trump is the nominee, he would need like an emissary to the suburbs, maybe as a running mate, right? Okay, Andy Beshear doesn't come from a battleground state in Kentucky, but he's basically your emissary to white suburbanites. You just have him go and campaign in white suburban areas all over the country, while Kamala's making sure you're more racist than you ever were before. Well, Steve, Obama said that he's not endorsing her. He trusts the process. You bet he trusts the process. He's in control of it. The Clintons' opinions don't matter. The Pelosi, Schumer, and the Obamas are in control. I don't need to know what delegate counts say or all these none of that matters. None of it does. What matters is what they think. And if they think August 18th that Kamala can at least make it competitive enough that they have a narrative for fortification, then they won't risk any further damage, and they'll go with her. And if she can't, they'll absolutely get rid of her. She's getting a tryout right now, and it's a tryout of one. That's the end result here. So start there, and then reverse engineer all of your analysis from there. That's why all the other candidates are that's why they're all endorsing her. This is why. They're going to have an open convention. The open convention may just be to legitimize Kamala. She does a credible enough job for the next 3 weeks. And that way they can say she won something, right? They don't want to let Trump say she's selected, not elected. She hasn't won anything. So they'll just fabricate. This is your precious democracy, of course. They will just fabricate a mini primary here. and make it and give her something to win. And then if with all of those favorables in her, that's how you get Jim Clyburn to sign on to stepping over her if she can't do it. You see what I'm saying? You gave her every advantage possible, and she couldn't move the numbers, or people got more of a look at her, and her numbers even went down further. So you have to start there. That's the end game. There will be an open convention of some sort. Even if it's just to legitimize her and say she won it and she united the party and Hosanna, okay? Or to get rid of her. Look at the Democrat convention and Kamala the way we looked at Joe Biden and the debate. If she can unite these forces enough and be a credible enough standard bearer in 3 weeks, great. They don't have to take on any more collateral damage. If she can't, they're not. But the end game is they're not going into Labor Day with crappy polling. They're not doing that. So if she remains even more unpopular than Joe Biden, she will not be the nominee. They will, and don't quote me processes. They are a law unto themselves. None of that matters. Whoever they come out with will be subject to the absolute most obnoxious public relations offensive you've ever seen. And it's going to make Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift seem subtle. And if you don't think it would work even for a Kamala, now, there's no excuse for Trump to lose to Kamala Harris. None. And that's if we were analyzing things purely politically. But I'm talking the kind of PR offensive that got 80% of American adults to take an experimental genetic serum that they never saw the safety data for. That kind of PR offensive is whoever they come out of this convention with. That's what's coming the rest of the way until the debate. There'll be one debate, if there's even that. But start analyzing things in the opposite. Do not think like we think. You'll be terrible at intel when you analyze your enemy the way you think. Analyze them the way they think. And for them, it starts with what's the result, and they will reverse engineer from there. A month ago, it was a right-wing conspiracy theory to question Joe Biden's mental state. And that was uttered by the same people that just pulled off the coup against Joe Biden. So again, take shame, everything else out of it. And the one thing I'll say about Kamala Harris you need to understand is this. She is not talented. She's not as clever as Trump. She's not as charismatic as Trump. But she has one characteristic similar to Trump: guile, sheer guile. Understand the spirit of Jezebel within her. She did not let all these men use her for nothing. She's risen above all of them. All of them. Do not underestimate her shamelessness. Don't underestimate that. Now, we do the work, put together a credible campaign against her. We should win. But do not go into Hillary doesn't have to visit Wisconsin now mode. Don't do that. Do not. You're never benefited by not respecting your enemy. If you don't respect Kamala the person, and given what Aaron just shared with you, I'd suggest probably not doing so. Absolutely respect the spirit of Jezebel inside of her. There's a reason why all those men she let get on top of her, she's now on top of them. More in a moment. Folks, Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on their app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs, and that way it can give you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, maybe even your stress management. All you got to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism. And then Lumen gives you the personalized nutrition plan for that day based on those measurements. All right. So if you want to improve your metabolic health, which is a great step in improving your overall health, take that step by going to Lumen, Lumen, lumen.me, and use Steve to get $100 off your Lumen. That's lumen.me, and use Steve at checkout for $100 off at lumen.me, promo code Steve for $100 off. All right, we're going to talk next with Dr. Jeff Myers. He is with Summit Ministries. He's got a new book out, Should Christians Support Israel? Seeking a biblical worldview in an impossible situation. And we welcome Jeff here back to the show. It's been a while. Jeff, good to see you again, brother. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, Steve. Good to see you.
So let's start, first of all, why you think this is a question that even needs to be answered at the moment.
I started thinking about this right after the October 7th attack. I began to notice that the young adults that I was working with, Gen Z, even evangelicals, were anti-Israel. They were even anti-Jewish. And so I spent some time looking at that. I found a poll from Harvard University that said that 51% of young adults said that Hamas was justified in its attacks against Israel because of Palestinian grievances. That figure went up to 60% in December. So I wrote an op-ed for the Daily Wire called "Congratulations, America, you've raised a generation of terrorist sympathizers," which got a lot of interest and led to an opportunity to go to the war zone to personally interview the journalists, IDF personnel, intelligence officers, religious Jews, secular Jews, everybody in between, Palestinians, to try to figure out what was actually going on and to come back to communicate the truth to the rising generation. But it's about Gen Z. They are completely indoctrinated. And if we lose this entire generation, well, we can figure out what's going to happen to America.
Well, let's start there. Because I think a lot of people would probably be confused if you are Gen X, boomer, or older as a believer. It was basically just within, well, if we did a good job of catechizing these issues, something like Summit Ministries would not be required, okay? But it was kind of just a basic assumption within American evangelical circles that you would be pro-Israel, even though you were often not even necessarily told why. But that was just kind of a default mechanism, right? And so what has occurred here to take that default and turn it into a fault line within our community? What's occurred here?
Well, you've got to keep in mind the young adults that we're working with now, who are 16 to 22 years of age, were not born when 9/11 took place. They have no cultural memory of Muslim terrorists. They don't pay attention to what's happening in the Middle East in general, but they have become anti-American. Only 16% of Gen Zers say they are proud to be Americans. They hear all of our rhetoric from the left and from the right about the negative things happening in this country, and they don't hear, well, we need to work to make our country better. What they hear is our country is terrible, and all of the news every single day supports that assumption. If you take that and tie it into the fact that all of their lives, they've been indoctrinated in their schools with a sort of proto-Marxist oppressor versus oppressed mindset to everything. And then you can see how a catastrophe like this kind of anti-Semitism can take place. They believe all they have to do morally to be in the right is to identify who the oppressor is, and then any action against the oppressor is justified as a means of self-defense. So the leftist progressive mindset that they've picked up in their schools now matches the Islamist Hamas mindset that's taking place against Israel. And then Israel becomes a proxy for the United States. If you hate America, then you'll hate Israel.
I like the way that you're approaching this so far, because there is a theological issue here at play. And I don't know what you see at Summit Ministries, but because you guys are dealing with the next generation every day. So what I see from afar is that young believers are heading to two camps, primarily theologically, that are often at odds with one another. But I think it's because they see one as alive and vibrant and anxious to take on evil in the world, and that's charismatics. And then the other, Reformed, because they see that essentially for a generation, we have taken being intellectually vapid, stupid, banal, and having no actual rationale for our belief system, any understanding of church history whatsoever, as a church growth plan, and exchange it with the purpose-driven life. Okay, and so because that's what I see in my audience, and I got one of the largest audiences of evangelicals in the country on this show, and when I get notes from young ones, they're almost always either Reformed or charismatic. And there are some real theological differences between those two camps, including on the issue of Israel. So how do you see similar trend lines there when you guys receive the next generation at Summit Ministry? Is that a lot that pretty much everybody wants to hear from, the folks that are alive in the spirit, and then the people who actually intellectually are taking their faith very seriously?
Well, I go back and forth between those two worlds a lot. Listen, I've had hundreds of hours of time with young adults this summer already. I've had over 1,000 young people who engage with me in personal Q&As about Israel. So I feel like I understand what's going on. On the one hand, you have a charismatic view that says Israel is part of God's plan for prophecy, and so we're going to continue to support them. And then you have the Reformed individuals who have moved a lot toward sort of a supersessionism, an idea that, well, the work of Christ, it made what Jews do irrelevant. I mean, we don't want to hate them. We don't want to be against them, but they're not relevant. Israel's not relevant. Jewish people are not relevant to what God is doing in the world today. So they've kind of over-spiritualized it. If I think there's a path forward, and this is what I write about in Should Christians Support Israel, which, by the way, anybody who's watching right now can get that book as a gift from me. Just go to summit.org/Israel. I've got a copy for you. But in the book, I try to go back to the idea of covenant. This is the most stable biblical principle relating to who God's people are. And it begins with Abraham. God secures this covenant with Abraham, makes it on behalf of Abraham. And then it's always with the people in the land, with the people in the land. If you look all through Scripture, that's always what it is. Well, then the Apostle Paul picks up this theme. And he says in Galatians chapter 3, those who believe are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. Somehow Christians have been grafted into God's root in a miraculous way by the power of God. And Jews, we're in the same root that Jews have been grafted into. The question of whether some Jews or all have been grafted out because of their disobedience or rebellion or whatever is God's decision to make, because God made the covenant with himself on behalf of Abraham, and only God can break it.
Because I have studied this and both sides' views, I have questions of my own on where I land on this. I certainly cannot deny that the enemy certainly treats Israel, as this iteration of Israel, as if it has some form of significance to him. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Okay, I cannot deny that. I also cannot deny some of the problematic history of dispensational theology, and that throughout history, Christendom has tended to take an eschatological view that not coincidentally kind of matched up where it saw itself either in a positive, neutral, or negative world. For example, you saw what we now know as postmillennialism surge after the Reformation, and the Puritans basically were inspired by that to found the country we live in today. But so I kind of have looked at this rather than getting into that fight, which I'm not even sure what my own answers are, and I've got too many friends on every side speaking into each one of my ears, or at least the one that still works. I've simplified it this way, Jeff. I mean, the same people that did October 7th to them did September 11th to us. The same enemies they have are the same enemies we have. I don't even need to consider the prophetic significance of this just to look at recent history. I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, it doesn't really matter necessarily from a geopolitical standpoint what we think of the prophetic iteration of Israel. What matters is the religious viewpoint of our mutual enemies, and the way they think about both of us, and the way they behave towards both of us simultaneously. You see what I'm saying? I don't even need to even enter into that discussion to say, I really hope Israel erases Hamas from earth because they would do the exact same thing to me for my belief in the cross as they would for them for their celebration of the Star of David.
Or for any reason at all. Hamas is the enemy of the Palestinian people as well as the enemy of Israel. That's one of the key things I learned by traveling to the war zone and actually interviewing the people who were involved. But listen, I think you've really hit on something here that's really important, and I want to give words to it. I think what we have is a theopolitical conflict, not a geopolitical one. This is not about a strip of land in the Middle East. This is about everything everywhere. This is a battle of worldviews. And in the crosshairs is Judeo-Christian civilization itself. And I know that sounds awfully dramatic when I say it, but I demonstrate that case in the book, and I give 200 pieces of documentation on it because we need to be clear about what really is taking place here. The interests of Hamas in annihilating the state of Israel coincide with the interests of progressive leftists in the United States.
Which is why they're aligning with it right now.
Well, of course, you see people in the streets. And if you ask them,
CNN literally said on national television, of course it was on CNN, so not many people saw it, but CNN said on national television yesterday that they're unsure the Democrats could either make Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, their nominee, or put him on a ticket with Kamala, despite he's maybe their most electable candidate, because he's Jewish and that could be a problem. That was just openly discussed on CNN just yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Because the anti-Semitism has gotten to the level where it's normalized, and among Democrats, you have people who continue to support Israel, sometimes with their words, sometimes their support is uneven, never as strong as most of the conservatives who are in power right now, but they've been there. But they recognize the reality of the situation. If they stand for Israel, then they win the hearts of some Jewish voters, and they lose the hearts of voters who are tending toward an Islamist viewpoint. Steve, I've spent time with these people. I had 1 hour with a Palestinian Gazan Muslim to just talk about what is going on, and he really believes that Yahya Sinwar, who was the guy who planned the October 7th attack, is the best guy to lead the Palestinians forward into the future. Very intelligent man, he said. Mahmoud Abbas, he's trash. That's the kind of conversation that you have. But who even really knows? 55% of the protesters on the streets were asked, do you know what river and sea you're chanting about? And they did not know. So it's not that they've got a lot of information. It's that they react with a reflex action based on a pre-existing worldview that is anti-God.
I love the distinction of a theopolitical issue, because it does adequately explain why all the same cultural forces aligned against a biblical worldview in American culture today are also aligned against Israel over there. And I think that's a very important distinction, and that's one of the reasons why I want to get this book. Jeff, tell people how they can get a hold of it again one more time.
Just go to summit.org/Israel. I have a free copy for you. Of course, my hope is that you will want to get a case of books and distribute them to your church, to your friends and family, because this is a critical issue at this time. And here we are approaching this week with the intended visit from Benjamin Netanyahu in Congress. It's going to be front and center. But in our minds and hearts, I say this as a Christian, we need to recognize that God is not done with Israel. Israel has a right to exist. God is not done with the Jewish people. And Hamas must be ended in its ability to field a military or a government.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to see you, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet. Dr. Jeff Myers from Summit Ministries here with us. And again, name of the book, Should Christians Support Israel? And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that we are aligned with Voice of Judah Israel, because this is a moment right now where the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. It's an excellent opportunity with Israel's very young, very secular, very unchurched, and that means they're actually more open to hearing the gospel maybe than previous generations. So you can help Voice of Judah Israel take the gospel back to its homeland to see, hopefully, revival there. They inspire evangelism, discipleship, and church planting there in the Holy Land, specifically to reach out to Israelis. And they do a lot of great humanitarian outreach to support Israelis as well. If you want to help to seize this moment to both empower the Jewish people against their enemies, but with the ultimate message of empowerment, and that is the gospel, you can rise up with Voice of Judah Israel now. Visit their website again, VOJ for Voice of Judah, vojisrael.org/Steve. That's vojisrael.org/Steve to learn more about their inspiring work blessing Israel at vojisrael.org/Steve. All right, gentlemen, a lot of fodder so far this hour. You can address the conversation we just had with Jeff or go back to some of the stuff I pointed out at the beginning about Kamala's ongoing current tryout.
I was tracking Theo politically with Jeff the entire time. His book is far more but a general concept than it is specifically about Israel. We're in God killer territory. We've discussed that before. Once you were as gender confused as we were, that's the last thing to be done. And it's why you have to get rid of Israel. It's why you have to get rid of America, the shining city of hill. It's why they're burning down Catholic cathedrals in Europe and a popular Baptist church in Dallas, Texas. It's all God killer stuff. We are in the end game now.
Yeah, I mean, let's pretend that maybe you think Israel is getting the better end of the bargain in terms of their relationship with the United States. And I'm talking geopolitically now, and that we're really the sole ones to prop them up. Isn't that, though, still, even if you believe that, even if that, let's just say that's really true, isn't that still a testament to what we've been able to build in the United States? That we're able to have an ally in the middle of that really wretched hive that is the Middle East. We're able to have an ally there because of what Western civilization has wrought. That you can take these a number of ways. The way where I fall down on this is, regardless of whether or not you believe Israel, the modern state of Israel, has any end time significance, they are an ally in a place where we really don't have a lot of allies. And what you said as well, regardless of whether you come down, where you come down on this, when it comes to Israel and prophecy and what have you, whether they're relevant, irrelevant, what have you, you should view this. I mean, that the enemy certainly still thinks that they're relevant by the way that they have treated them, really since they reformed as a modern state. Ever since then, they've seen Israel as a threat. That's kind of where I come down on that.
Amen. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you think that this prophetically is a significant iteration of Israel or you don't. The end result is the same. I mean, there's a reason why there's queers for Palestine and not queers for Israel. All the same sides are aligned on the exact same side against all of us on that issue, just like they are every cultural issue here at home. Hour 2 is next. Greetings, back with Hour 2 here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, live on Twitter X right now as well. So hello to all of you. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can do so by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then also, if you wouldn't mind, we would love it if you would leave us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice, and we thank all of you that have done that for us already. And you can also hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow, and that'll make sure that every time we do a new episode, it'll be right there in your podcast feed every single time, and we thank all of you for doing that for us as well. You know, we're talking a lot now about accepting the reality of living in a post-Christian culture, in a negative world, and that means like everything's got to be reset now. And there was a book written many, many years ago, kind of a de Tocqueville level of book, looking at some of the secrets of America's, newfound success as a nation. And it coined a phrase. And the phrase it coined was the Protestant work ethic. And it said, like, what came out of the work ethic of the Puritans basically got seeded into the water table of America, the DNA of America. That the idea that work in and of itself brings value and dignity. That it serves a purpose, a divine purpose. That we have talents and gifts that we are to use for the glory of our Creator. David Bahnsen wrote a book called Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life. He kind of wants to rediscover that yet again. Because again, we are at the, as I used to say, we're at the, the Vince Lombardi first ever practice with the Green Bay Packers, where he had a once proud franchise and he's got to rebuild it back from scratch. And his very first words to his team at their very first practice was, "Men, this is a football. You have to start all over again." We're control alt deleting here. We unplugged it. We're plugging it back in. Okay, and that means we've got to reinstill all the settings. All right. So get this new book at fulltimebook.com. Again, fulltimebook.com. This is not just a normal defensive work. This isn't you're not doing enough. Spend more time away from your family. This is what are you doing it for? What's the point of the gifts and skills that we have? Fulltimebook.com. Again, that is fulltimebook.com. And with that, it is time to ask me anything. And boy, howdy, I can only imagine, mercy me, the questions awaiting me this week. With everything that is going on, I've not seen any of these questions. Todd has selected them. Aaron, you have them. Let's go.
I have one myself that I was just kicking around during the break. Now, this might be a simple question, but when was the last time the Democrats actually had a fair primary? Was that 2016 or 2008?
No, 2016 is when they stole it from Bernie Sanders, remember?
That's what I thought.
And remember, we were pointing out that, Trump was trying to make that a big talking point to try to divide Hillary's base in 2016. So it was 2008 when Hillary was the anointed savior and Obama and his base of activists overturned the party establishment and took her out. So that's how long it has been. Yeah, 2008.
Wonderful. We'll begin with Jacob Owen.
It's a precious democracy, Aaron.
Yes. Jacob Owen asks, what decorations do you put up for Black Swan season?
So these are the conversations we have at our household when we're not discussing existential matters. We're almost to the end of July, and we still have all of the Independence Day stuff, and we've got permanent lights on the house, and we're still running the Americana stuff. And you know what I'm thinking when we turn to August 1. You guys know what I'm thinking, right?
All the wrong things.
Yes. I'm thinking, fall is here. Let's go. Let's kick it off. Pumpkin spice season. Amy's like, nope, too early. Can't do it yet.
God, Amy, thank you for planting a flag for sanity. God
but the
bless
problem
you.
was we couldn't come up with what else is, her birthday's in August. That's important to us, obviously. But like, what season is August? The kids are going back to school. It's the dog days of summer.
It's just August.
I think now we have an answer. August is Black Swan season. I like it. We'll turn the permanent outdoor lights. We'll have them all black. We'll go Vanta black. I like that. What do you think? August is Black Swan season. I like it.
So you can play any kind of music. You could play like
Black Hole Sun becomes
Emperor's March just on loop.
No,
Black Hole Sun becomes like a lullaby.
Here's your decoration. You just keep your front door open day and night and let anybody come in.
There you go. And well, I see what you did there. Perfect. I like it.
These next two we'll take back to back at Todd's request. George Lee has this. Steve, my question for Monday is this. If the failure of the assassination attempt truly means he's appointed and anointed by God, then can you please give me a biblical example of where in the Bible God spared a leader's life with absolutely no thought of repentance from that leader? And then we'll take this from Deborah Van Dyke. In listening to Theology Thursday the last few weeks, the clarity and points made by all were great. Since the assassination attempt, the comments you make seem to have failed to recall previous positions taken. It's like Steve of 30 days ago could debate Steve of today, and they don't agree with each other. Can you see that in yourself? What changed? Example, if Romans 1 is about God giving us over, are we not joining the lost and voting for the lesser of two evils?
So let me take the second question first, because that actually is more important of the two, even though they are kind of a combination. Because the first one is assumes actually I'm gonna take the first question first. And the reality is that, how do I put this? You're assuming. I take your question. This is why I'm confused, is I don't want to project on you what I'm not sure what you may not be saying. Okay, and so I want to be as fair as I can. The problem with George's first question is that I think you're assuming in your question that God only works. I mean, when was Samson repentant? I mean, that's why I used my analogy. When was Samson like, you know what, you're right, I'm going to stop going to the Canaanite brothels, my bad. When did that happen? Do you know when that happened?
She should read your column, I think, is a good starting point.
Yeah,
for this
I think George, it's the first one. I'm back to George, the first one.
Oh, George, excuse me, him, yes.
Yeah, but also, it doesn't require you to be in covenant with God to get some kind of calling or anointing from him. You know, so Darius wasn't in covenant with God. Cyrus wasn't in covenant with God when he handed the Jews back their homeland. You know, I mean, God makes the rain fall on the just and the unjust alike. Okay. The second question.
Also, too, if I may, to help your cause, because I agree with it, you're assuming that this is all about Donald Trump.
Correct. It's actually about God. Trump is an immaterial. Trump is a guy that a half an hour after he's dead, we're going to never talk about, like, largely ever again, except very in passing. And you know why? Because that's true of almost everybody a half an hour after they're dead. Unless you were directly impacted by them, and then you don't think about it after the fact. And then there are moments that, you know, you remember or recall things that you may do so fondly or negatively. But I mean, all of us, we're vapors, you know?
In many ways, that might be the blessing behind Trump not giving a fantastic speech and going on and rambling, reminding us to the degree it isn't about fundamentally Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Now, to the second question, I had a position on vaccines until May of 2021. And then suddenly I don't have it anymore. So I suppose you could go back and look at everything I said about vaccines, and more often even didn't say. Okay. And then you can look at the position I have now after the data I looked at in May of 2021. I had one position of who I thought God was and what he wanted from me on September 19th or on September 17th, 2003. And then I went to a Promise Keepers event on September 18th, 2003, and God gave me an entirely different understanding and knowledge of who he is and what he expects out of me and what his plan for my life is. I mean, ultimately, an instant change of mind in a biblical worldview is not a reason to be suspicious. So I didn't say it was necessarily a reason to accept something either. You look at the evidence for why the change of mind occurred. Now, my change of mind, I've not actually changed my mind on really anything. Todd and Aaron changed their minds. I've been saying, what part have I told you guys all along I was going to vote for Trump?
Right.
From the very beginning. Now my level of my activity in the race and my level of involvement that I've placed myself in has changed. But I have said how many times, I mean, I think we desperately have to win. Therefore, he desperately needs to win. Some of you act like I just didn't say these things like the entire last year and a half.
That's what's really weird about this, because I said I'm 50-50, but I was going to wait till the end. Mm-hmm. That's what I changed is the end to me is now. I'm going to decide right now. But
where I changed is I was really ambivalent towards an election I should actually be really invested in. Anybody should be. I am actually invested now.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it comes down to exactly what I wrote for The Blaze today, which I've mentioned on the show. But what crystallized this for me is the dude is out there catching bullets that are meant for us. They're not shooting at Donald Trump because they think he's controlled opposition. Help me. Can you guys do me the 4D chess that says Donald Trump is controlled opposition, and that's why they just tried to assassinate him? Can you help me with that? That you are just you. I'm not. This show's not smart enough for you. I'm not. You're just way above me intellectually. I can't get to a place where the false flag is the false flag of the false flag. You know, some of you are beginning to sound like some of the very MAGA people you condemn. The things you are willing to say to miss the signs of the times right in front of you sound to me every bit as silly as, here's my Jesus mural with an earlobe bandage because Jesus is in solidarity with Trump. You guys really aren't that far apart, frankly. I mean, you guys are concocting a narrative to maintain letting Donald Trump break your brains. That's why I began last week pointing out, do not be the nothing good comes from Nazareth person. Now, that's not the same as test the spirits. But Samson doesn't end with a repentant heart. He ends up alone. He's a tragic figure. He's also used by God to do very mighty things. Trump may end up being in prison. You guys think if he loses this election, they're not going to... I could tell me if you think this scenario is nuts. All right? What's the sentencing now? Like the 20th or the 18th of September, Aaron?
Yep.
Okay. So let's even just say it's Kamala. She succeeds the 3-week tryout we just described. Okay? She's their nominee. All right? They come out with a united front. She's everywhere. Everything you could possibly imagine. She's on Thursday Night Football's debut, opening week of the year. She's there. Okay? Every pop culture institution to cool her, to make her cool, that they control, which is virtually all of them, they go the full brunt of safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. They got 80% of Americans. And if you don't take it, you're racist. If you don't believe that, if you don't think the same thing about Kamala, you're racist, is kind of their version of the mandate. You know what I'm saying? Well, we gave you a few months to take it voluntarily, but since you did, now you have to. You know what I'm saying? They do this. So it's the same game plan. They got 80% of Americans to inject a genetic serum that we'd never mass injected into humans in 7,000 years without seeing any of the safety data. That just happened, right?
It did.
It did. So let's just say, and then after they do all of that, and then there's one debate, right now it's scheduled for the end of September if it continues as is. And then right before that, at Trump's sentencing, the judge sentences him to 100 years in prison, but says he will suspend the carrying out of the sentence until after the election. Let's see if they can't do that. Stop! Don't. I'm not the show for that. Do not come to me on this show with what the enemy cannot do. Start from the premise of what you think they want to do and then assume they're going to try it. Even if there's nothing in the sentencing code in New York State. Has anybody in New York State ever faced 120 years in prison because they paid a fairly modest sum to silence a side piece? Has that ever happened before in the history of New York State? No, it hasn't. So don't do that. What these people do is whatever they want, and then they just wait to see if we can get the Supreme Court to tell them they can't. That's what they do. Vaccine mandates, take them off ballots, whatever they want. And then they wait to see if the Supreme Court tells them they can't. That's literally their entire MO, guys, on every issue. They'll just do whatever they want, and they'll wait to see if the Supreme Court tells them they can't. That's the entire mission creep of the left. And then let's say Trump, and then they do that so they can now give Kamala the talking point. Well, you're a certifiable threat to democracy. You're scheduled to go in prison. So you'll tell any lie you want. You can't be trusted. You're so desperate to not die in Rikers Island that, you see what I'm trying to say? That they just give her that talking point. And then let's say Trump loses. You guys think they're not going to say, hey, you think they're just going to let him go play golf at Mar-a-Lago the rest of his days? So they're not going to try to carry out that sentence?
I do not.
Of course they're not. This is the stuff of kings and conquerors and trophies, and you mount heads and scalps to send messages, and you put people on stakes outside the city gate to send messages to, this could be you if you're next. Understand the signs of the times and what to do about them. So what was the woman's name that asked that question?
Let's see. That was
not
Deborah.
George. Deborah, let me turn it around on you.
What did you do, Deborah?
No, it's not a what did you do, Deborah. These are good questions. Okay? Let me turn it around on you and ask you a question, Deborah. Why have they tried to bankrupt him, imprison him, and murder him? Why? Because up until the murder, I could have given some of the same answers you did. Well, yeah, clearly they're picking on him, but the dude does color outside the lines. The dude does say on tape that he had classified intel, right? We could have done all those things, right? Okay. Well, now he's just standing out in a field, actually doing the shtick that Democrats love because it turns people off. You know what I'm saying? He's not out there reading the Gettysburg Address, man. He's out there saying, I love this guy because he loves me. I hate this guy because he hates me. Anyway, now that I'm done with my, grievances, let me turn to the immigration table data. Okay? He's doing the stuff that actually turns a lot of people off, and it's right then and there that they try to take him out. Why? Well, Steve, this is mental illness, and okay, you're right. Mental illness just happened to shimmy up a wall. Mental illness got within 150 yards of a straight line kill shot and was taken out by a sniper 500 yards away. So there was some kind of perimeter that they could have stopped him. Something they could have done. Now the Washington Post is even reporting that they didn't give him that he asked for extra detail, didn't get it. Dude flew a drone. The would-be killer flew a drone over a secured area. You ever tried flying a drone over a college football game? I've been at a college football game where that happened. They shut down the whole damn game. Because you don't know what it's supposed to be, a secure airspace. So, Deborah, you tell me why these things are all happening. I would love your Dana Scully analysis, but I don't think there is any. I think the signs of the times are very clear. This isn't about Steve Deace, and this isn't about Deborah, and this isn't about Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. You are watching spiritual war from the unseen realm spill out over into our culture and body politic. And just as I said to Dr. Jeff Myers at Summit Ministries last hour, it doesn't matter if you don't believe that this iteration of Israel is prophetically significant. What does matter is that the enemies of the West and of Christendom also hate Israel. And even when but Steve, they do that because we favor Israel. Really, where was the nation of Israel when Saladin took over the entire Middle East, and the Muslim forces before Charlemagne got within half a block of Paris? Where was Israel then? What iteration of Israel existed then, Todd? There wasn't one. There wasn't a country of Israel. There wasn't one. Didn't exist. It had been gone for hundreds of years. And so without Israel as some kind of instigator or fulcrum, did the forces of Islam come after the West and Christendom nevertheless, Todd?
They did.
They did. That's your church's history, correct?
It is.
So you know it very well, do you not?
Yes.
Yes. This is the birth of the Holy Roman Empire, the fusion of the Roman Catholic Church and the military might of Europe to preserve Western civilization. Well, really to create Western civilization. To preserve Christendom. This is why it was formed. These two entities were often not in alignment for hundreds of years, actually. So no, it doesn't require us being an ally of Israel for Islam to hate us. It hated us when there wasn't an Israel. It hated us in the Middle Ages when all of Christianity thought Israel was done, finished, and been replaced by the church. That's what all of Christianity thought until the 19th century. Same thing applies here. It doesn't matter what you think of Donald Trump. It doesn't matter. What matters is, why are they shooting at him? Because he's controlled opposition? Because yes, they're anticipating he'll just get in there and do what they want. So they took out a sitting president, put in a nitwit, after trying to shoot Trump, by the way. That's why. Steve, who's the they? Demons. Literal demons. You tell me what the other explanation for this is. I would love to know, connect the rest of these dots for me. Because I don't think you can. There are three responses to this era. One, you can let Donald Trump break your brain. to the point that you actually ignore the signs of the times of your own belief system and worldview, or even allow yourself to get to the point that you now oppose things that for many years you supported just because it might actually give him credit for it. 2, you let Donald Trump break and bust your brain to the belief he's some threat to democracy. You actually believe these talking points. You're in therapy right now. You're Rosie O'Donnell on X crying because you press this democracy that your political party, by the way, just threw out every primary vote. And you just can't even. Or you can understand the signs of the times. Recognize that there are going to be moments and times that you're not even comfortable at times with whom you're aligned with, but that this is a war. And what matters is what is true, not who is saying the truth or doing it, but what is true. And I'm going to say one more thing here that's going to piss off a lot of people, but I'm only going to say because I think it needs to be said. A lot of this is coming from people who live in the state of Florida, a lot of these kinds of questions. And I understand. I love your governor. I spoke with him at length over the weekend. I'm going to be trying my best to help get that amendment to fail, that kill 'em all amendment. We're going to be talking a lot about that on this show in the coming weeks and months. We're going to get the governor on here soon to discuss it, because I think next to the presidential election, that's the second most important election in America this year, is that amendment. If we can't beat a kill 'em all amendment in Florida, where they have a 1 million Republican voter advantage now, okay, if we can't beat it there, we have no political clout as pro-lifers anywhere for the foreseeable future. We're going to get... the pro-life issue in America is done if it can't win in Florida, and it can't stop 60% of people, which would include a lot of Republicans now, crossing over to say, yes, let's just kill babies whenever we want. We have to win that. But a lot of these kinds of questions and skepticisms are coming from people who, frankly, are benefited pretty greatly by who their governor is. And it is very simple to say, you know what? It's very easy when you are protected by Constantine there. When Constantine is your Red Caesar there in Florida, it is very easy to sit back and say, you know, we're good here. I don't have to get my hands dirty. I don't have to accept that cringe. I don't have to take on that baggage. I don't have to do that. We're safe here, at least for another 2 years, because he's not going to be there the full 4 of whoever is the next president, and you don't know what's coming next. There was Florida before and after DeSantis. There was a book written many years ago, England before and after Wesley, about the revivals led by the dawn of the Methodist Church in England, how the whole country was different after the Methodist Church than it was before. Yeah, that Methodist Church, that's what happens, okay? You write books about Florida before and after DeSantis. Florida, where Rick Scott and Marco Rubio were your heroes. The do-nothings. But it's pretty easy to sit back when you know you're under the protection of Ron DeSantis, to sit back and say, nothing good comes from Nazareth. We're good here. I don't have to take part. I don't have to get my hands dirty. Folks, 21 million people live in Florida. That's not even 10% of the American population. The rest of this country is at a breaking point. Cannot afford 200% higher new 30-year mortgages, because they're 100% higher now. What will they be if give these people another 4 years? 200? Do not have a governor who fires shots at floods of migrants trying to invade the state border, but instead are worried, hey, is that drug mule right there, is he carrying the fentanyl that's going to kill my kid next? It's pretty simple and easy when you're under the protection of Constantine to look at the rest of your fellow patriots around the country and say, tisk, tisk. I can't believe you're so desperate to fall in with this lot. Not going to have Ron DeSantis forever. In fact, you're only going to have him for 2 more years. Let's hope come 2027, you're not sitting there thinking, man, can't stand Trump, but I wish we would have won that one. Life in Florida certainly seems different now. I hope not. I hope not. Anybody want to comment on that before I move on?
You did the best you could. I mean, the last part there, there's clearly a desire, instead of we hang together or we hang separately, it's like, hey, why don't we add a civil war on our side to the whole thing, because that would be fun. Okay.
This dovetails quickly. Erica Svanberg easily asks, which side is more frustrating, the group that screamed at you when you wanted to vote for DeSantis, or the group screaming at you for being left with no choice but Trump?
Correct. I really don't understand. Thank you for saving my life during COVID, but I can't believe you don't want to vote in the primary for the guy that created the substance that I knew better than to risk taking and still is unrepentant for it. How is that any different than I can't believe I'm not subscribing to the Blaze. You're all sellouts. And it's a bunch of people with gators in their profiles, so they're Florida people. Okay. I can't believe you're all doing that. Meanwhile, I've got nothing to say about Ron DeSantis. Actually, I didn't even go to the freaking convention. Ron DeSantis spoke at it. Hell, Ron told me the other day he talks to Trump all the time. I mean, explain that to me. Everybody's a grifter who is supporting Trump except DeSantis. What? Thank you for saving my life from the jab that I don't want to take, but how dare you not support in the primary the guy who is proud of authoring the jab I don't want to take that you saved me from? Do you guys know which one of those things, does either one of those things that make any sense at all?
By the way, that should actually increase your respect for Ron DeSantis. After going through what he went through,
Correct.
His whole rationale for this election, the reason he ran is we cannot mess this up.
Correct.
We can't mess this up. He went through a load and loads of during that primary.
Almost
as you
all of it
well
undeserved.
Know, undeserved, and yet he still is the bigger man to this day.
Yep.
Well,
I don't know what to say.
He doesn't have the problem that a lot face. This all makes sense though, Steve, if you understand that a lot of people think narcissism is actually principles.
And they also think that some lessons or something are going to be learned by another L. The lessons you're going to learn are how much more higher could interest rates get and mortgage payments, and how much more expensive could your kid's car be. Those are the lessons you're going to learn. Well, as we lament and hopefully confront eventually what's become of America's university system, let's also make sure we celebrate and honor and support the remnant out there still actually trying to create the kind of education that is needed to preserve the blessings of liberty in America. And at the forefront of that remnant is our friends over at Hillsdale College. They're celebrating essentially 4th of July month, Independence Day month. And so here in the month of July, you can go to their website, daceforhillsdale.com. That's F-O-R, daceforhillsdale.com, and you can watch an inspiring portrayal of Thomas Jefferson as he reflects on the meaning of his Declaration of Independence in a letter that he wrote late in his life. And yes, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams both died on the same day, and it was the 4th of July, if you can believe that. Crazy. All right. So you want to watch this video. They'll also give you a free commemorative copy of the Declaration of Independence. This is all from my friends at Hillsdale College. All right. They need our help and support, and continuing to support and help our values. So go to daceforhillsdale.com. F-O-R, again, daceforhillsdale.com is where you want to go. That's daceforhillsdale.com. All right. Let's get back to some Ask Me Anything.
All right, we'll go to Andy Connor, who asks, did the Democratic Party just kill primaries, essentially setting a precedent that you can replace your candidate at any point in the race if you're unhappy with their polling?
Well, they've essentially killed the Constitution. They've killed virtually every institution, so yes. And at this point, I think on the right as well, we'd be better off going back to conventions and smoke-filled rooms. Because there at least would be like real negotiations happening there. What we have now essentially are fake primaries that people with high name ID just buy. The number one determiner of who wins a Republican primary is name ID. not their belief system or capabilities or integrity. All right, so that's not what you asked, but it kind of broadens your similar point. But yes, and their voters are going to be fine with it. Their voters want to be controlled. All right, these are the people that were anxious to post their Vax cards, anxious to put themselves in a mask as their avatar, anxious to post a Ukraine flag. They're posting their pronouns when they're not even gender confused to show solidarity. They want to be controlled. They're totally fine with it.
Next, Josh Mandage wants to know: do you have any updates on new nefarious content?
Yes, we're in the fundraising stage right now. And we have an exciting development there that I can't tell you about, and we've spoken to multiple platforms about the possibility that have shown interest in the possibility of being the host for the sequel television series that we are working on right now. So yeah, I'm hopeful by the end of the year we are going to have some definitive answers where this is concerned, and then the only issue at that point we would have is Sean Patrick Flannery's shooting schedule. They signed a deal to do Boondock Saints 3. Him and Norman Reedus did a couple of years ago. That thing has been on again, off again, on again, off again, and that's because Sean told us recently at our dinner in Pigeon Forge, there is an A-list director. I can't mention his name. I don't think I'm allowed to do that. But there's an A-list director that the studio really wants to direct Boondock Saints 3, and they've essentially been trying to wait for his schedule to open up to get him to agree to it, and that has made it uncertain when they're going to shoot that movie. So it's very possible we could have all our ducks in a row and everything by the end of this year, and then we might have to still wait to see when that movie is going to shoot. So that would be the next obstacle we'd have to confront once we have our funding and platform secured.
Next, Dan Groeschel asks, if the two options, which one had spent more time? A, the time Todd spent playing College Football 25, or B, the amount of time Lindsey Graham has spent trying to win the affection of a woman. That is tough.
That is... That's among the greatest questions that's ever been posed in this segment right there. That is a he gets us. That is or she gets us. I'm sorry, who was that sent that?
Dan,
he gets us.
Lindsay's going to have a very low number because I have never in my whole life played a minute of that game.
Okay, I'll go with Todd's answer. I just loved the question. All right. Figured at some point maybe Lindsay was at least unsure, right?
Well, let's not ponder too deeply.
Yeah, because none of us know that experience.
I had to look back to be sure. The original NCAA game was 93.
Yep, it was the Bill Walsh game.
It was called the Bill Walsh. Yep. But I wanted to know the date because what between that game and between Tecmo Bowl, which I played a ton of, what was wasn't there? What's the other big main football game? That was before NCAA, wasn't it? The is it Madden?
Madden's even older than Madden. Came out about a year before the first college. 92 for the Sega Genesis was the first Madden.
See, I haven't played a single football game after Tecmo Bowl. I retired.
Okay.
Next, we go to Georgie Roy, I should say. Now that Biden is out, how will Republicans spin the fact their candidate is now the only incoherent, rambling old man wandering off into random rants on the campaign trail?
This is coming. Georgie is correct. They're going to gaslight the heck out of you. They're going to gaslight the American people that they never hid the fact that they were covering for a senile, dementia-ridden president. Folks, ask yourself this question. When was the last time in your life ever that you went 5 days without seeing the President of the United States?
Last month. Before the debate.
There you go.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on that, but I just...
Actually, that makes my case for me. Yeah. Same circumstances, same guy. So that's exactly what they're going to do. The number one polling trend we saw all throughout the primaries is overwhelming majorities. I saw some polls that showed 70%. I saw some polls that showed 80% of Americans did not want to vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump again. So they're going to be the choice of the new generation. That's all coming. Absolutely. We've got the codger candidate now. We're the ones stuck in the past. That is all coming our way. Now, okay, some of you are going to say, but Steve, what would you do to push back on it? Well, I would take Kamala seriously as a candidate because of the spiritual forces she is a front for. But I would not necessarily campaign against her seriously. Can I articulate what that means for just a minute? I'd make sure I take Elon's money, man, and I got the organization on the ground that I need in all these battleground states. You know what I'm saying? Like I would still be running against the idea that I'm up against a formidable foe, because you are. Hell. Formidable foe. You're up against hell. So I'd absolutely be running I'd be doing my campaign apparatus structurally, the stuff that is underneath the surface. Okay? I would be doing that, but as I would for any other opponent that I thought and knew was more formidable as an individual brand. Above the surface, I'd mock the poop out of her. What have we said for many years? What the devil hates the most is what?
To be mocked.
To be mocked. And this is something you can count on Trump for. I am not confident I can count on him to take Elon's money and spend it on the organization effort we need. Raise your hand here if you're confident in that. Moving on. Raise your hand, though, if you're confident that Trump and his team are prepared to troll and meme the hell out of this queen of cringe.
That's just a default setting.
Yeah. Okay. So, I would above the surface, I would make her a laughable figure. And that, to me, that's the way you give people permission to push back subconsciously against that. You've never been more racist than you are right now if you don't vote for her. You need to make her, she's not a serious figure or front. That's what I would do. I'd mock troll the whole time. The Veep montage, I do more of that. In fact, if anything, I just make that my commercial. Like I wouldn't even come up with another message. And then make them sue me for copyright. I would mock her mercilessly. Because you're also not going to generate sympathy for her like you would. You don't risk that like you do for Biden. Everybody's got a grandfather like that. You don't risk that with her. Because she's just too cringy all on her own. This is a woman that her own party, when she tried to run on her own, couldn't even get to the Iowa caucuses. And that was after she had the most devastating moment in the debates going after Joe Biden, remember, for calling him for his segregationist past. Okay? So I would mock her mercilessly above the surface. I would want to create... And that way you're also balancing the PR campaign, because it's like they're now in self-parody, like they're taking themselves too seriously, elevating this woman that we all know is a joke. You see what I'm saying? Like they're now the ones that are not self-aware. They're now the ones who are cringe. They're the ones who are out of touch. You see what I'm saying? That's what I would do. But below the surface, understand this is a fully armed and operational battle station. And if they've got a narrative going into Election Day that they're within any margin for error, they're going to fortify this like a mother, and it's election month again. So you got to go into Election Day, man, up by like 5 or 6 in the Real Clear Politics polling average, not 2 or 3. Anybody want to add to what I just said? Or are we good to move on?
Yeah, we're good.
Yep.
And that's assuming, I know Nancy Pelosi just came out for her. Cool. Nancy Pelosi also originally said that we should not go after Joe Biden. Remember, she was on the Sunday show the very first weekend. Okay? I promise you, if Kamala's negatives do not improve between now and August 18th, they will absolutely kick her to the curb, or they'll just produce the lyingest polls you have ever seen. Like even more than we saw in 2020. Joe Biden's going to win Wisconsin by 18 points. Even more than that stuff. Some of that stuff we went after during that election, remember, and broke that stuff down, that this clearly isn't a real poll. It will either be they will successfully raise her favorables to the point they can write her out, or they'll swap her out. If they don't think they can do that, because they'll take on too much water doing it a second time. Then they're just going to make up polls that just lie to everybody and gaslight you like they lied to you about what mask data shows. You'll just see the same people told you masks are 100% effective against the spread of coronavirus. Will be on the same news sources telling you Kamala Harris with a post-convention ballot, she's up by 10. Because they need to concoct a narrative that gets them within fortification range, or what I used to call the margin of stealing. They're not in that right now with her. But it's easier for them to get there with her than it was with Joe. Because at least they can run on everything's racist with her. They couldn't run on anything with Joe. Well, they couldn't run on anything that was believable to a large swath of Americans. Aaron, go ahead.
All right, we'll move on to Darren Fikes. I have a theory that the Democrats are willing to let us chase them, trying to catch them cheating on the presidential election. All the while, they are actually cheating in the House and Senate races to control both of those and therefore not only impeach Trump, but actually remove him this time. I personally believe that they have already cheated in those races and that it's actually easier for them there. Fetterman, Lake, any thoughts?
You're dealing with demons. It's not an and or. It's an and also.
Next.
They are playing multi-dimensional chess. So it's not a substitute. It's plans with plans and plans. That's what it is. When you're not a sovereign being, but you're immortal, you try to counter an immortal being who is sovereign, meaning that God is the plan in and of himself. God can foresee. God can act. He's outside of time and space. Okay? He can foresee a scenario and exercise his sovereignty by saying that is leading to what I believe honors my word, and so I'll let it play out. Or he can intervene when he foresees how a scenario is going to go and say, that's not what's going to happen here. So this is where we're going to Romans 8:28 this thing and use it for good. You see what I'm saying? He is sovereign. So, I mean, they're not sitting up there. He doesn't require, he has a plan. He is the plan. God is the plan. When you're immortal, but you're not transcendent, you have plans on top of plans on top of plans on top of plans. You've got eternity to plan, or at least until you get your ass thrown in the lake of fire anyway. You've got eternity to plan. So the enemies you're up against, yeah, is your answer, but it's not in place of, it's in addition to. Plans upon plans, the plans have plans, and the plans that have plans have plans.
Did we ever decide what we're doing for overtime?
No.
Okay. I know what we're going to do for overtime. We're going to do some bonus Ask Deace Anything.
Okay.
Because there's one note in here I don't think we're going to have time to get to that I think is important to get to. But let's go to this one, maybe to wrap things up. Kent Miller asks, in what way has cultural Marxism played on or adapted itself to the unique Christian category of guilt? Has the church, in the name of maintaining a false sense of belonging, been offering an alternative way to deal with guilt that collectivists have now picked up on?
Yes. And also been heavily influenced by that guilt and then syncretized it, infused it with Christianity. So you create things like the evangelical immigration study table. We actually know what God's immigration plan is. He had a direct theocracy. He had a country. He established its policies. Here was their immigration plan. Be kind to the alien and sojourner. You're not allowed, but did I say squatter?
Oh.
That wasn't a word, was it?
No.
Alien and sojourner means foreigner passing through. Somebody seeking sanctuary. Okay? Does not mean squatter. There was no little Edom. There was no little Philistia. There was no little Assyria. There was no little Babylon. Okay? If you wanted to stay, you had to assimilate to the point of religious conversion. And the borders were so fortified. It was a crime against the Levitical law to move a boundary stone. And God spends much of the Old Testament actually fighting wars to protect and defend his nation's borders. Does that sound anything at all like the current immigration plan we have in America?
No.
No. But does that also sound like anything at all like most of the immigration talk you get from much of the Christian church?
No.
No. So that's why it's yes, but also we are because we've all been indoctrinated by some degree by the spirit of the age in these government schools. We are all walking in with some of this baggage. I got to talk about Focus on the Family here real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, because they've got an outstanding podcast to encourage Christian families from Jim Daly. If after this show you're like, okay, Now I got my download on the spiritual war going on in the culture, but now I need some encouragement about the war happening in our home and in our family. That's where Focus on the Family comes in with Jim Daly. You can listen, learn, apply, and thrive in Christ. Use it as a lifeline to defend your family and your heritage and your legacy and your home. Trust me, you won't regret it. That's Focus on the Family with JimDaly.com is the website you want to go to in order to get the podcast. Focus on the Family with JimDaly.com. Get some help with the unique challenges Christian families face today in a negative world. That's Focus on the Family with JimDaly.com. All right, we're going to stick around a little bit longer in overtime and do a little bonus Ask Me Anything. For the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.